All right, good evening, everybody.
Good evening, everyone.
I'm echoing on your end, Hetman, for some reason.
Interesting. What about now?
I think we're better. Yeah, we're better. Excellent. Okay.
Perfect.
All right, good evening. I apologize. We are having technology issues galore tonight, including the fact that YouTube decided to fuck with my stream key for some reason and run Monday's stream, which is now rescheduled to Friday, thanks to everyone asking, tonight. So, that's fun. No, I'm still echoing on your end. Are you on headphones?
No, I'm not.
Oh, go get headphones.
And I don't have my headphone or microphone with me right now. I'm in the process of moving.
You are killing me, Smalls. Okay.
Give me one moment. I actually might have some headphones.
All right. Anyway, I will keep entertaining people. So, tonight was originally supposed to be a talk about Ukraine and the Russian terrorist attack. I'm going to mute him for a second. The Russian terrorist attack, and it stopped because this article that I'm putting up on the screen now came out. We are entirely too big. I'm moving us. Wrong button. Let's unmute Hetman before he loses his mind. Are you back? No. Okay. So yes, that is kind of where we're at. I read this article today, and it kind of goes along with the article we talked about with the commander, well, a couple months ago, November, December.
I got my headphones in.
Excellent.
So no echoes?
Yeah, we're good. And you sound a lot better.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we talked about in a previous plus 972 article with the commander in December, talking about their gospel AI system. And we were less talking about the AI system as we were talking about the human element involved in the AI system. And this article came out today, and I put it in the cathedral, and I passed it around to a couple people, so Sunday might go over it too, I expect, at some point. And we looked into this article, and it's frankly shocking. What were you saying before we went live, Hetman, about?
Honestly, this is the first time I've ever heard of them using AI to predict where targets might be, to kind of use it, in a targeting system. Yeah, this is the first time I've actually heard of it in general, not just by the Israeli forces. So I'm actually, when I looked at this, I was kind of shocked, and I think it's pretty self-evident that if you are utilizing this technology, I mean, it brings about a lot of moral issues to me. but also, how does it work? That's kind of, my question
Well,
going into this.
I think that's a fair place to start. This article and the previous one kind of paint an interesting picture, and we're gonna throw up the previous one tonight too in the somewhere for your edification. The current article is up pinned in the chat. So the first thing I think to talk about is that 972 magazine is kind of outside of the typical realm of Israeli news media. I'm not sure that
Are they an Israeli news company?
They're an Israeli and Palestinian news company.
Interesting.
And I'm
So
not
independent, I'm guessing.
I don't know what their relationship is with the Israeli government, obviously it's good enough to get these individuals to speak on an anonymous basis, because the basis for this reporting is claimed to be 6 intelligence officers who were serving in the Israeli army at this time. But it's not good enough that I don't think they are I don't think they're operating with like the same kind of. I think they're operating under some kind of exception to the rule that requires licensing for media in Israel. Because as you might be aware, chat, Israel is not a free press. They have governmental controls over who may be a media organization. So between this article and the previous one by the same magazine, they kind of paint a picture of a pair of intelligence systems. And I'm not going to read the whole thing verbatim. You're perfectly capable of doing that yourself. The first one they talk about is gospel, and this identifies structures and targets that Hamas or the PJL might be using. This new system they're talking about today is called Lavender, and Lavender is a different system entirely. And they're both generative AI algorithms, kind of like Chat GPT if it was Skynet, and not capable of doing its own thing. So what Lavender, formerly, the Lavender system is designed to mark all suspected operatives in the military wings of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ, excuse me, I messed up the acronym up, including low-ranking ones as potential bombing targets. So this is, instead of targeting locations, this is designed to find people. And sources told Plus 972 in Local Call that during the first week of the war, the army almost completely relied on the system Lavender, which clocked as many as 37,000 Palestinians as suspected militants, and their homes for possible airstrikes. In and of itself, this is technologically disturbing, I guess, for a lot of people, and I can see why. There's a degree of, I think, for soldiers' comfort and understanding that their targeting is being selected by intelligence officers who are vetting the system and doing things to determine whether or not these are valid targets. But as we're going to talk about later, I'm not entirely certain the Israeli military cares much about that.
No, I'm not either. But it does beg the question, how many other governments are using a similar software? I mean, have we been using one?
I don't know. There's no much.
That's what's disturbing to me, actually, is not even.
I think the principal thing to talk about here is the volume, though. Like the volume of targets generated and struck. Most of the early stage of the war, they were using these systems to develop targets and striking them. And like if you read the other article where they talk about the gospel system, they talk about how they were able to generate more targets in this conflict than they ever have before in any previous conflict in Gaza.
There are probably intelligence officers entering data into this system. I'm sure that it doesn't just work on its own.
They describe the system in a little bit of detail afterwards. So here, during the early stages of the war, the Army gave sweeping approval for officers to adopt Lavender's kill lists, with no requirement to thoroughly check why the machine made those choices or to examine the raw intelligence data on which they were based. So the inputs were put in, the machine spit out its answers, and they just approved it. One source stated that the human personnel often served only as a rubber stamp for the machine's decisions, adding that normally they would personally devote only about 20 seconds to each target before authorizing a bombing, just to make sure the lavender marked target is male. So the only criteria that the IDF is using to determine whether a target is valid, and the only thing is a
Male
20
or
second
female?
check to see if it's male, which goes to the accusations that people have that Israel is just counting any military aged man as a Hamas fighter. Which I think is definitely what happened in the case of the hospital in Al Shifa this past week. There's no way that there were 700 terrorists sitting in that hospital. It's just not fucking happening. It doesn't.
No, that sounds really
They went in the hospital and they counted every
impossible.
male they
Yeah,
saw as a terrorist.
yeah,
There's no reason. There's no reason. Hamas operates by, and all these groups operate by cells. There's absolutely no reason. There's no reason to have 900 or 700, whatever the IDF is claiming at this point, because the number changes all the goddamn time. This was despite knowing that the system makes what are regarded as errors in approximately 10% of cases, and is known to occasionally mark individuals who have merely a loose connection to militant groups or no connection at all. I am terrified by the implications of that sentence.
yeah. No, it's beyond terrifying.
What does merely a loose connection to militant groups means? Did you say hi to someone in the market and the system marked you?
How would it know that though? That's the thing is how does it like how do people um you know become targets?
Well, it stands to reason. Uh, it stands to reason that they are marking this system in such a way as they're using observations from drones and satellites, and they're probably watching the surface area of Gaza very closely. Let's get a little further in.
It's probably not a very hard area to surveil
Well, not really.
in general because it's so small.
It's small. It's largely open.
Yeah,
A lot of daily life is conducted out in the open in Gaza. So it's very easy to watch people who aren't in the tunnels, and the only people in the tunnels, and the only time they're really going to be in the tunnels is when they need to fight or hide. Like now, where they probably are and not getting bombed in the case of Hamas and associated groups. Moreover, the Israeli army systemically attacked the targeted individuals while they were in their homes, usually at night while their whole families were present, rather than during the course of military activity. According to the sources, this was because, from what they regarded as an intelligence standpoint, it was easier to locate the individuals in their private houses. Additional automated systems, including one titled Where's Daddy? Because that's not creepy, also revealed for the first time, were used to specifically to track targeted individuals and carry out bombings when they entered their families' residences. The result, as the sources testified, is that thousands of Palestinians, most of them women and children, or people who were not involved in the fighting, were wiped out by Israeli airstrikes, especially in the first weeks of the war, because of the AI program's decisions.
what is the estimate now of the amount of bombs, the tonnage of explosives that have been?
Oh, I lost track of that a long time ago.
Yeah, I've heard something like 2 Hiroshima bombs worth of you know explosives and munitions have been unleashed upon Gaza.
As for casualties, they were dropping, like we knew it in the early weeks, they were dropping 1,000 and 2,000 pound bombs, which I said at the time wasn't going to do anything to people in tunnels, but it will fuck up a house real good.
Fuck up a house, it'll fuck up the houses next to it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
32,975 Palestinians per Al Jazeera, including 14,500 children. So approximately half of that dead are children. 484 medical staff have been killed, and more than 75,000 Palestinians have sustained injuries. And that's 3 hours ago from Al Jazeera. Um, Gaza's looking at 62% of all homes being destroyed or damaged. Uh, and on top of that, there's a famine, an artificially induced famine, which Israel is desperately trying to deny they've started. So this has been called, in a lot of corners, a genocide. And me and Hetman had a discussion the other night about this. We were more specifically talking about the Rabini and the Finkelstein and the Benny Morris and Destiny debate, um, and in kind of the discussion around that. And if, for those of you who are in the chat, this was Hetman's first exposure to Destiny, and he quite gratifyingly turns to me when on the phone and goes, "I watched this debate, but who the fuck is Destiny, and why is he sitting at the table with these three people?" So fair play.
I didn't think he belonged in the same room as any of them, honestly. Even Benny Morris, who, really, it's funny because I haven't read any of Benny Morris's books. There was one book that I really, really wanted to purchase because it pertains largely to the Ottoman genocides of the 20th century, which was, it's fascinating to me for a number of reasons. And, now I'm actually reluctant to pick up that book because of how biased he was in the interview. And if he's like that in general, with a topic, with the Israel topic, it's possible that he would not be a good writer in any, the good historian in any sense of the word.
Here's the thing about Benny Morris, and I said this when I was on with Sunday and Brooks. Benny Morris is one of the historians who taught me that there is a Palestinian side to the story worth knowing. I took a undergrad course in Israel and Palestine, and it radically shifted my perspective. And because it was so long ago, it was much closer to the time when I was a stupid little shit conservative.
Mhm.
So, like, Benny Morris has a lot to do with why I am much more informed on Israel and Palestine than I would normally have been.
I'm guessing they assigned one of his books.
Yes. And then I wouldn't. He's one of the reasons. And he's like, his attitude in that debate was just so disappointing, from a standpoint of reading his work and like seeing what he means in this context.
He kind of reminded me of a lot of the Ukrainian diaspora historians when they would talk about, the nationalist guerrillas and how they could do no wrong.
And I don't think that's
like, and you're dealing with a person, say for example, like Taras Hunchak, for example, or Oris Subtelny, who've written very good general histories of Ukraine, but when it comes to that part of it, they're completely biased. They're completely it is very disappointing. I can see why you'd be disappointed. And for me, seeing, I never had any experience reading his books on the Israel Palestinian conflict. Actually, admittedly, it's a conflict that I think now, it's only becoming, it's becoming more interesting to me because, what we're seeing now as far as, the violence against Palestinians, it's higher than it was even in 1948 in terms of the amount of death, I think.
It's statistically,
in this case,
it's proportionally horrifying. 30,000.
Yeah, it is.
Casualty count, pure casualty count in 6 months now exceeds over 100,000 dead and wounded. And there are thousands missing because they're just trapped under collapsed buildings. They're dead.
Yeah.
I mean, they're dead.
Yeah, I was just going to say they're dead.
Two ways
Yeah.
about it. They're dead. They're just not being counted in the figures because there's no body.
The one thing too, though, that I must stress is that I'm not entirely 100% trustful of Al Jazeera's numbers. I'm guessing they're close to the truth. Um, you're not going to really know. It's hard to actually count in a situation like this.
Sure, there's going to be an
Um,
adjustment after the fact.
yeah, there always is, and I think that that's something that always has to be stated. The thing,
However,
you brought. Okay, go ahead.
historically speaking, the numbers in Gaza are generated by the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health is paid for by the UN and the United States. They're Hamas operatives, sure, but they are American trained statisticians. These are the numbers that the UN is able to verify within a couple hundred each time this happens, and Gaza usually flares up every 2 years. And these are the numbers that the IDF is using to make its projections about how many people have been killed. So, in a certain sense, these numbers are the only operative numbers being used,
Yeah, which is why I stated that they're probably close to the truth.
and they're being
Um,
used on both sides.
you know, the one thing you had mentioned about arbitrary targeting of military-age men. This is kind of like when you brought that up. I've started to really uh, within the last week or two revisit the Bosnian conflict, and it's a really good conflict if you want to understand intimate violence. And when I say intimate violence, violence between neighbors and people who know each other. It's also really, really good um, to research if you want to understand, um, you know, when the line is drawn between targeting, like, potential military threats and, committing war crimes or crimes against humanity. It's a really kind of good case study of that. And, these sort of things have happened in history prior and then, of course, afterward. But this kind of reminds me, I mean, not to say it is, I think it would be very too soon to say it, but it's kind of like a Srebrenica by bomb
I don't think
and
that's
shell.
wrong. So, like, I think getting back to where I was trying to before we got distracted by Destiny being present in a debate he shouldn't be in, um, I have a certain amount of reluctance because we have talked about this, you and I, both on stream and off. I have a certain amount of reluctance to unilaterally assign the term genocide to what's happening because
No, no, me too. And
um, I
that's
it's like I said that night of, then when we were on the phone, a pile of war crimes does not necessarily a genocide make.
no, it doesn't.
This
I
article,
think you go
this
ahead.
article though, this article speaks to a systemic nature of war crimes. Um, that could actually elevate it into genocide. Um,
I think it's certainly coupled with the with the potential famine that is arising. It certainly meets the criteria of a crime against humanity. Um, Genocide, it's something where the burden of proof it's in the motive itself. It's in you're looking for, motive is very important, and that's what's going to be hard. This is going to take. We're not going to know if this was genocide until I think well after this is over, and we don't know how this is going to play out. We might not actually. Who knows? For all we know,
Israel has an excellent chance of obfuscating what's happened and allowing the so muddying the waters as to never allow an actual definitive ruling to be handed down.
I bet that there will be people. I mean, I know that they're not party to the IC, the International Court Tribunal. Um, but I think if that there is some sort of trial in absentia of the people responsible for it, I'm not sure. I could see it them somehow being tried, being the ICTY or the ICT, pursuing a genocide charge and actually not being able to convict them or to reach that verdict.
However, that's years off. Ultimately.
Yeah, it's years off, and I think that once I want to make a statement that this is why, to me, we really have to think about the usefulness of this legal concept, because for a person living there, and I can even say, like, say an Israeli during October 7th, that certainly isn't genocide by any means.
Oh, that hasn't
but
stopped certain people from saying it is.
That hasn't stopped certain people from saying it, but barbaric attacks like that and barbaric, warfare like what's being waged in Gaza, they might not be legally fit that definition, but does it make it any worse or any better? I mean, is what I'm trying to say. Does it make it any better?
Yeah, does it change the reality on the ground for the people who are experiencing it?
To me, it doesn't really matter all that much what it is. It's mass killing. It's industrial scale mass killing. It's modern warfare, and it's targeting of non-combatants. And that's why I think, as much as I think that there is use for genocide as a legal concept and as a term, in regard to history and everything like that, it really fell short of the mark with many atrocities that occur. For example, like, there's so many people trying to push that narrative even in regard to Ukraine right now. I have a lot of colleagues that,
I think well, that's
like,
again we're getting away from
from the topic at hand. But what I'm saying is people will try as they might to argue whether or not something's genocide, but ultimately that is the work of the legal system. That is, it has to be ruled upon. There has to be evidence, and we're not going to know about it. We're not going to know whether or not this is in the legal sense for a long time.
All right. Yes. Be that as it may, however, I don't think it is inappropriate to call what's happening in Gaza now an atrocity, a series of atrocities. I don't think it's inappropriate to call what happened.
No, it's not. It's not inappropriate. I think it's completely appropriate.
A series of atrocities, because that apparently needs to be said anytime you're bringing this up, and so therefore we have unilaterally condemned Hamas today. You can call us terrorists a different day. At any rate, according to two of the sources, the army also decided the first weeks of the war that for every junior Hamas operative that Lavender marked, it was permissible to kill 15 or 20 civilians in the past. The military did not authorize any collateral damage during assassinations of low-ranked militants. The sources added that in the event that the target was a senior Hamas official with the rank of battalion or brigade commander, such as they are in Hamas, the army on several occasions authorized the killing of more than 100 civilians in an assassination of a single commander.
There's something so wrong with that. Reminds me...
If you did that today in the American Army, if you briefed that, you would be relieved on the spot at minimum. If I got up as an American officer and said, we can kill up to 20 civilians per target, I would be relieved on the spot. My career would be done.
Even in regards to a senior rank, like a senior ranking enemy. I mean, that's ridiculous. You're actually it reminds me kind of like a retaliatory policy that's, and I hate using that comparison,
But it
but
is a
it's
retaliatory policy.
it's yeah,
It
but it's
complies with Israeli
similar.
doctrine.
Which, if this is their doctrine, that's similar to the Wehrmacht in the in their campaigns in Poland and the Soviet Union. I mean,
I'm going to stop you right here for a second for two reasons. First, I need to answer a question. Why should we need to wait for the ICJ to attach the label of genocide? You don't have to wait at all. I'm going to wait because I have to be a scholar at the end of the day, and running around and calling things before calling it before the time is not
yeah,
something I can
it's not
sustainably
within
do.
our
It's not within my purview.
say, and it's the same here too.
It's not within my purview to do. I can't responsibly do that and still say I'm doing a good job at being a scholar and an educator. The second thing is there's a comment on one of our things concerning the discussion with Brooks on Sunday, where Brooks makes a very similar comparison, less directly. I kind of want to lay this out, and I haven't had a chance to talk with Brooks about it since then, and I need to. But I'm fairly certain that both Hetman here and Brooks were not saying that this is comparable to what the Wehrmacht did in places like the Warsaw Ghetto, but that the policy in and of
No,
itself
it's not.
is
It's not.
structured in a similar way.
It's structured. It very much is structured in a similar way.
And that the comparison is drawn not to what the Wehrmacht did in motivation, but how they structured their military response to insurgency and to resistance.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 100 mark of that's something that they used in Ukraine. It's something that they used in Poland as well. And actually, they had smaller numbers for other territories which they were present in, like in France. They had a different retaliatory policy in the event of the death of a soldier via hostile action, via guerrilla action. They'd usually take about 10 suspected communist male hostages in France. If they could find, Jewish French hostages, they would use them preferably. So yeah, I mean, this type of policy, it's not the same, but you can see similarities, I would say, and that's to me is very, very scary.
There's only so much you can do as an authoritarian occupying force.
Yeah. But I mean, I mean, 100 civilians being permissible for a senior target. I mean that's extremely draconian. There's no other way. It just shows how very little they value lives there. And
I think there's some lives that are being valued.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
it shows how little they value Palestinian lives.
So previously, in other conflicts in Gaza, low-ranking individuals in Hamas were not targeted via airstrike. They weren't really marked for targeting. It was difficult to do. It was difficult to track them. So they didn't do it. After October 7th, they decide, well, we're going ham, and they went in and they started bombarding Gaza effectively indiscriminately. And it talks about it here. Let me turn it up. Can you hear me now? The new policy posed a technical problem for Israeli intelligence. In previous wars, in order to authorize the assassination of a single human target, an officer had to go through a complex and lengthy incrimination process, cross-check the evidence that the person was indeed a senior member of Hamas, find out where he lived, his contact information, and finally know when he was home in real time. Basically, it's a kill chain. All the information that we wouldn't usually, before we'd authorize a strike, use. When the list of targets numbered only a few dozen senior operatives, intelligence personnel could individually handle the work involved in incriminating and locating them. I don't like this phrase incriminating because that implies that you were tried. This is not a trial. However, once the list was expanded, they had to rely on automated software and artificial intelligence. The result, the sources testify, was that the role of human personnel in incriminating Palestinians was pushed aside, and the AI did most of the work instead. According to 4 of the sources who spoke to 972 in local call, Lavender, which was developed to create human targets in the current war, has marked some 37,000 Palestinians as suspected Hamas militants, most of them junior for assassination. The IDF denied the existence of such a kill list in a statement to 972 in local call. Well, they denied it. I guess we're done here.
Daedalus, do you know of if in any of the wars fought by the United States in the 30 years, if there has been a similar sort of permissibility towards collateral casualties when targeting someone? Have you ever heard of such a policy?
I've never heard of this.
The United States did a great job, for example. Well, not a great job, but it like, you know, in the Vietnam War, for example, like, you know, there were whole free fire zones, and
yeah, let's talk about that actually, because that's happening here in Gaza too.
That's like a free fire zone. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that.
Well, no, the IDF is explicitly setting up free fire zones. Okay, I'm going to say a thing, and it's going to make people mad, but I'm going to say it anyway. A free fire zone is not in and of itself illegal per the laws of war. However, and this is a huge fucking however, the United States has taken the position in military ethics classes and teaching officers that the use of a free fire zone is, while not illegal, unethical. And that not only is it unethical, it is ineffective in its goal of allowing for more efficacious force protection. So
Daedalus, I think you're... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I coughed. So what the free fire zones have been being established to do is when Israeli forces are stopped, they set up a free fire zone, and everyone in that zone that moves gets shot who is an Israeli. This is designed so that they don't have to waste time figuring out who is and is not a threat. It has been found that this is not useful in establishing a defensive formation, and that soldiers usually are able to observe and identify targets and follow the rules of engagement perfectly adequately without making the rules of engagement more permissive at certain situations. So, this is additionally kind of linked into the concept of counterinsurgency. A free fire zone, particularly in an area where you're conducting a counterinsurgency, is detrimental, right?
It's extremely detrimental
to your strategic goal of stamping out an insurgency. There's a great scene in the Netflix movie War Machine where the McChrystal character is Brad Pitt's McChrystal, whatever, is explaining to people insurgent math, quote unquote. He's like, if we kill one person, then 3 people become insurgents, but then we blah, 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 blah. I'd have to look up the scene to see what he said exactly. But the net effect was, the more people you kill, the more insurgents you create, which is kind of why Hamas is winning this war. Effectively. Like, they're not necessarily going to win it militarily, but like strategically, they're probably going to be in a better position than when they started. Um, so you get that kind of like discernment is so important in counterinsurgency. Uh, for example, when I was an officer cadet, we talked a lot about this because it was 2008, 2009, 2010, etc. And this was right around the time when the first big counterinsurgency manual came out by David Petraeus, and everyone was reading it, and all of the officers were relaying their experiences. And one of the things that was told to me that stuck with me is, yeah, our doctrine says enter a building by blowing a hole in it. But we save ourselves a lot of time and energy 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the line if we go up to the door and knock and ask to be let in. So we threw out doctrine and we reworked it. Israel's not doing this. Israel is, well, they're killing everyone, basically. They're moving in the positions that they went into the Al-Shifa hospital, and something horrible happened there. We're never going to know exactly what. But I've seen reports of surgeons being killed, executions.
Was this? Where was this again?
The Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City.
So this was the one that was a few months back, right?
No, this was last week.
Okay. Was it a bombing, or did they
They surrounded the hospital, they captured everyone inside of it, and they very possibly started executing people in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
Oh, and they put up a video where they found some guns in the MRI room again. Presumably, Hamas knows how MRI machines work. I'm not rereading the same information again. At 5 a.m., the Air Force would come and bomb all the houses that we had marked. We took out thousands of people. We didn't go through them one by one. We put everything in the automated systems, and as soon as one of the individuals was home, he was immediately became a target. We bombed him at his house. This is indiscriminate bombing. It literally is indiscriminate bombing. They throw discrimination out the window. It's war crimes. Every instance where this happened is a war crime. I nicknamed those targets garbage targets. Stop. Bad YouTube. Still, I found them more ethical than the targets we bombed for deterrence. High-rises that are evacuated and toppled just to cause destruction. According to the data from the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza, on which the Israeli army has relied almost exclusively, so that's mostly to get the people who keep saying, oh, but they're Hamas, they can't be trusted. Some 15,000 Palestinians, almost half the death toll so far, occur in the first 6 weeks of the war. And here's a lovely picture of, well, basically a city block that's been obliterated. The Lavender software analyzes information collected on most of the 2.3 million residents of the Gaza Strip through a system of mass surveillance. Yeah, basically what I said. And then assesses and ranks the likelihood that each particular person is active in the military wing of Hamas or PIJ. The machine gives almost every single person a rating from 1 to 100, expressing how likely it is they are a militant.
But what number out of the 1 to 100 is permissible to drop a bomb on their
threshold
head?
on the bomb? Apparently 1.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, someone's alive. Get him. Man, imagine what happens if police departments get their hands on this shit.
Yeah, that would not be good. It's coming, though.
It's probably already there. Yeah, human personnel is a bottleneck, obviously. I mean, it's supposed to be a bottleneck. The bottleneck is good. We want the bottleneck. The solution to this problem is artificial intelligence. And it's not artificial intelligence, it's a generative algorithm. Based on AI and machine learning algorithms, included in this guide are several examples of hundreds and thousands of features that can increase an individual's rating, such as being in a WhatsApp group with a known militant, charging cell phone every few months, and changing addresses frequently, or changing cell phones every few months. Aren't most of the cell phone plans in not Western Europe pay per month, like burner phones to begin with? Like, isn't that a pretty usual thing in a lot of countries in the Middle East?
That's in Ukraine. That's one of the things you can do. Generally, you actually
Well, no
don't really have
Ukrainian's
like a
gonna show
monthly
up.
pay plan.
No Ukrainian's gonna show up on this. They all use Telegram, not WhatsApp.
Yeah.
The more information variety, the better. This can create militaries to create tens of thousands of targets, while the actual decision to attack will remain a human one, which only works if the humans vet the information the AI spits out. I don't need to look at that. There was no zero error policy. Yeah, everything was statistical. Everything was neat. It was very dry. I think someone quoted that for us already. Yes, yeah. Accurate only 90% of the time. In other words, it was known in advance that 10% of the human targets were not members of Hamas's military wing at all. For example, it flagged people with similar communication patterns, including police and civil defense workers, militants' relatives, and residents who happen to have a name and nickname identical to that of an operative. I really hope none of those operatives are named Daedalus, or they're going to bomb me next.
That in itself is so problematic, though, right?
Yes,
I mean,
we're going to kill everyone named
if you have a very
Steve.
if you have a very common surname or common first name, which that's
Which, again, a lot of these people will.
of course.
My nose is clogging. All right, I'm going to step out real quick and grab a Benadryl. You entertain people.
So I want to ask the people on our chat.
No, I didn't mute anybody. And I'm back. And what happened to your audio?
I have no idea. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear Hetman?
Anyone hear me?
Hello? Bueller? Borelli?
Okay, so people can hear me now.
Okay.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I hate technology. Anyway, go ahead. Do
Yeah, I
whatever you were
posed a
going to say.
question to people. Yeah, you hate technology. How much do the Palestinians hate it right now? The question that I posed to people in the chat was, how much of this is a result of not wanting to do proper targeting the old-fashioned way versus I think that in any case there's a wanton disregard for lives, but I'm wondering just how much of it is not wanting to put in the extra work to locate targets.
Well, we're going to get into this a little bit later in the article. Actually, I want to move to it now. So if you're an American officer and you're calling in an airstrike on a target, or you're calling in an artillery strike on a target, you are physically observing the target. You are looking at it. You are determining that it's actually a valid target. And then you're calling in the strike, and then you're guiding it in. You're either telling the artillery shells how to adjust the fall so they hit the target, or you're telling the plane where the target is so they can find it. Israel isn't doing this. They're not saying, like, they're not putting eyes on the target. They're just going, well, the AI says we probably, like, there's a whatever percent chance that Joe and his family are sitting in their house right now, and there's a 10% chance that Joe is a militant. Let's go fucking blow up Joe. Like, that's what it comes down to. That's what they're saying, that this is a statistical approach.
Which has always been great for warfare. I mean, it brings me back to sort of McNamara's idea of warfare,
Well, ooh, shit. Bad can of pop. There is a video by Mooncat about Web3 and cryptocurrency and that whole phenomenon and how it's fucked up it is. And in the end of the video, or near the end rather, she describes a system in which a war is decided via algorithm. The algorithm turns and she lays out a very dystopian scenario. A war is declared. The algorithm determines which side will win and how many people die on each side, and those individuals are instructed to report for quote unquote termination. This isn't that far off from that kind of concept, right? Ultimately, how is it much different? How is it much different? AI generates targets. Human passes over target for 20 seconds. And then they bomb the target. Do we know if the target's at the place that we're bombing? No. Do we know if the target first? Do we know for sure if the target is valid? No. Have we used discrimination? No. This is
No, it's dystopian for sure. It's very terrifying. I'm not gonna lie. I'm horrified that this is already happening.
and this comes against a
And
backdrop.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised. But
this comes against a backdrop of permissiveness, right? Permissiveness. We can bomb. We can kill everyone in a hospital. Permissiveness. They bombed a consulate last week. Was there a target there? Maybe, yes. However, it's a consulate. It's foreign soil. It's sacrosanct. Israel doesn't care.
I'm wondering what the response to that will be, by the way, which is, departing from the scope of this talk.
Iran's probably not going to do anything because the United States is sitting on Iraq.
That's what I was just gonna say, and
Yemen
aircraft carrier groups in the Red Sea and stuff.
and fucking Jordan. We're sitting on those three countries like rocks. So in order to get to Israel, you have to get through us, and we're probably not going to let them get through us. Unless they decide to give Hezbollah
They can do
sneaky...
something asymmetrically, though. They can, attack an embassy or utilize different militants to attack Israelis abroad. They can do a lot without hurling missiles or rockets or using even Hezbollah to do that.
Yeah, but I think the problem with that particular response is that it does not necessarily direct yes, it is Iran attacking Israel, but it's not Iran attacking Israel directly, which is the warranted response in this case. Like, it's not
Of
beyond the
course.
pale. It would, like, if for example, if they bombed an American consulate, we would bomb Iran. It's not beyond the pale for Iran to have that response. Like, for Iran, they should be treating this as a terrorist attack, which it effectively was.
I have my reservations against that government.
I do too.
Yeah.
But they get to play by the same rules as we do. Like, that's the game we're
True.
in.
True. That's the game we're in.
So the Iranian government is horrifying, and they're killing their own people right now as we speak today. It's happening. However, they get to be mad about Israel doing it because hypocrisy
I'm sure that
because hypocrisy is the foundation of international relations.
I am sure that my ex-Iranian girlfriend was very thrilled, actually. I'm not joking, very thrilled about this. She was very happy when Soleimani got executed, and that actually turned her into a Trump supporter, of all things. So,
thank God for exes.
Yeah, she's a cool person. We're still friends, but in any case, yeah, it's astounding to which, the degree to which the Iranian diaspora hates the government there, and actually how much most people, especially those living in major cities, hate the government too.
The numbers change all the time because it depends on where you set the bar of what a Hamas operative is, right? Kind of what I was talking about.
Give me 1 minute. I got to take a drink.
Okay. While I'm here and while we're pausing, everyone go subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. It makes Avery the History Dog very happy.
All right, I'm back.
Hi, back. I'm Daedalus. There are times when a Hamas operative is defined more broadly, and the machine starts bringing up all kinds of civil defense personnel, police officers on whom which it would be a shame to waste bombs. These are literally non-combatants. It's not a shame to waste the bombs. It's a crime to bomb them. Israeli military flatly rejects these claims. In a statement to Plus 972 and local call, the IDF spokesperson denied using artificial intelligence to incriminate targets. Excellent, because only a jury or a judge in a bench trial can do that. Saying they're merely auxiliary tools that assist officers in the process of incrimination. That's not better. Yep, it's like assuming the AI selected target is male rather than female. Second problem. How do you know that a woman isn't necessarily assisting Hamas in other capacities? Just a thought. There are no women among the ranks of the military wing of Hamas and PIJ, as far as we know. Yeah, I added 0 value as a human, apart from being a stamp of approval. It saved a lot of time. If the operative came up in the mechanism, I checked that it was a man, and there would be a permission to bomb him subject to an examination of collateral damage, which apparently was at least 20 people. Next step is identifying where to attack the targets. I like that they go to the IDF and get comment before they publish the article. That's nice. Hamas places operatives and military assets in heart of civilian population. This is the IDF spokesperson again. Systemically uses the population as human shields and conducts fighting from within civilian structures, including sensitive sites such as hospitals, mosques, schools, and UN facilities. That's called a city. Hamas's extensive tunnel system passes on hospitals and schools, use ambulances to get around, and countless military assets has been situated near civilian buildings. That means you don't shoot at those things. A major reason for the unprecedented death toll from Israel's current bombardment is the fact that the army has systematically attacked targets in their private homes alongside their families, in part because it's easier from an intelligence standpoint to mark family houses using automated systems. Indeed, several sources emphasize that opposed to numerous cases of Hamas engaging in military activity from civilian aliens, in the case of systemic assassination strikes, the army routinely made the active choice to bomb suspected militants when inside civilian households from which no military activity took place, which means it's no longer a valid target. The choice, they said, was a reflection of the way Israeli system of mass surveillance in Gaza is designed. Everyone in Gaza has a private house which they can be associated with. The system could easily and automatically link individuals to their house. In order to identify the moment operatives enter the house in real time, various automated softwares have been developed. These programs track thousands of individuals simultaneously. They identify when they are home and send an automatic alert to the targeting officer, who then marks the house for bombing. You can put hundreds of targets into the system and wait to see who you can kill. It's called broad hunting. You copy and paste from the list of system target procedures. More than half the fatalities in the first month of the war, 6,120 people, belonged to 1,340 families, many of which were completely wiped out inside their homes. War crime. Much higher than the 2014 operation, which was actually, I think, the largest one to Israel mounted in Gaza to date until this one. Another source said that each time the pace of assassinations waned, more targets were added to the system to locate more individuals who could therefore be bombed. The decision of who to put tracking systems could be made by relatively low-ranking officers in the military hierarchy. Excellent. So the Israeli military doesn't actually have much in the way of professional education for their soldiers or officers. So an Israeli major is kind of useless to most militaries to begin with, or as opposed to an American major who's probably on their second fucking master's degree by the time they by the time they become a major, and they will have it once they've been promoted and gone through school. This kind of factors into why the Israeli military is held in such low regard overall. They don't have very good education. They're not very good at fighting, and as a rule, they're not very professional. And I think this is an excellent example of that.
I mean, they've been able to slip into tons of countries' airspaces and bomb the shit out of them without getting shot down.
We gave them the best fighter jets in the world.
Yeah, but you have to be pretty well trained to use those.
I mean, you have to know how to use the thing, but that doesn't necessarily
I'm
mean
not gonna look. I can say you can say whatever you want about them, but it isn't gonna change the fact that they're when this is over, it's still gonna be a shit show. They'll probably deal with an insurgency, but I'm guarantee you that the military capacity of Hamas is going to be almost completely shot.
the military capacity of Hamas is going to be fine.
How do you think that?
They're not going into the tunnels. All Hamas
They're
has to do
blowing
is
the tunnels up. They're
they.
flooding them with seawater. That's
Well, no, they think they're blowing some tunnels up. They think they're flooding some tunnels of seawater. They're not verifying these things. They have no idea how many tunnels there are. They're not. The only way you're going to destroy Hamas's military capacity is if you systemically move the tunnels and find and destroy the Hamas fighters inside the tunnels. You're not gonna. You're not. If you flood a tunnel, they're just gonna move over to another one. You can't
I
flood
mean,
all the tunnels.
isn't that the whole goal of this? Isn't that, what they're planning on doing in the long term?
No, it doesn't seem to be the case. They haven't done it so far.
So then what is, actually that was something that
That's a worthwhile
Dr.
discussion.
Dr. Waitman Bjorn
Yes, brought up
brought
today.
up. What
Uh,
is their end goal here?
and here's the answer, and here's kind of the confounding variable, and why I don't think you're going to necessarily be able to easily get a genocide conviction. I don't think Israel knows what the goal actually is. I think right now they're paralyzed. They don't know what to do.
Do you think that they had any real plan going into this?
I think they thought they were going to get into a massive fight with Hamas, and Hamas just hasn't given them that fight. The other militants in Gaza have to a certain degree. But look at Israel. They don't have control of Hamas City. They've retreated every time they've tried to take control of it. They don't have a plan.
So
They don't
you're
know what
talking
they're doing.
about Gaza City, right?
Yes, sorry, Gaza City. Excuse me.
Mhm.
It's basically Hamas City too at this point. They don't have a plan. So they went in, they started breaking shit and knocking things over. Hamas fights back. They contract their area of defense so they don't have to defend as much territory. And Hamas goes back to launching rockets out of ruined buildings. They don't have a plan. It's not working. The numbers that Israel is giving for fighters being killed are all bullshit. We know that. We have no way to judge the effectiveness of this, and Hamas is probably picking up recruits by the hundreds every day. This situation isn't good. Israel doesn't have a plan. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have international support. They've floated a number of plans, including having Egypt lead a coalition, probably a non-starter. Have America lead a coalition, a definite non-starter.
Yeah, it's
They're fighting a war principally to allow Bibi to survive. Is really all that's happening.
he doesn't seem to be doing a whole good. Have you seen the recent protests?
I have, which
Yeah,
I
it
think
doesn't seem like he. I think that survival is
I think that's exacerbating the problem.
in
But the
question.
reality is that any government that comes after him is going to be just as bad. It's not like there are good Zionists in the Israeli Knesset. There's no end in sight to this conflict, and there's no goal. The only thing that seems to be happening is death. It's pointless.
Yeah,
Israel doesn't have an actual victory condition they can achieve. It's just absolutely pointless. They're like, yeah, we killed 700 Hamas fighters in a hospital. Nah, fam, that ain't it. That doesn't even make any sense. Like, it sounded stupid when you said it out loud, right?
what other um what other evidence has there been of that's kind of what I'm more interested in learning about is obviously we know that there's an extensive bombing campaign, a lot of explosives being hurled around, but I'm interested in these you know up close and personal executions. What do we know about them currently?
Hard to separate propaganda from fact.
Yeah, that's what has been so hard with this conflict,
Um,
with any conflict in general, but especially the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I think it's one of the harder
I think it's uniquely
ones to
primed.
separate fact from fiction.
I think
Yeah.
it's uniquely primed to be a conflict of propaganda. Um, and this is something I think is worth mentioning too, in particular with regards to Israel. Uh, the prevailing view, like the most popular show on television remains NCIS, right? For
Mhm.
21 seasons now, which is fucking buck wild, by the way, when you consider that NCIS is a spin-off of JAG, which went for 10 seasons, but that's beside the point. For a not inconsiderable length of time, the character, Pablo Cortez's character, Ziva David, was an Israeli, and they did a lot of Israeli plot lines, and inevitably they tried to make the Israelis look as cool as fucking possible. Um,
Mhm.
we are primed very early on, particularly because we have an incredibly culturally Christian background in the United States, to be favorably disposed towards Israel.
You also have a not so significant, um, and I know people. There's a lot of like canards that are raised, but I mean, as far as world Jewish population, there's a large pro-Israeli, Jewish population. There's a whole lobby for it.
There is.
Um,
That's, I
yeah,
think, one of the reasons why Israel has managed to be successful as a country. Uh,
it has.
the,
For whatever reason, Ukraine hasn't managed to be that successful, despite the Ukrainian diaspora really being about the same level of zeal. And in terms of their financial success too, a lot of them are very well educated. But yeah, um,
well, that gets kind of
uh,
into the mechanics of immigration, right? And who, as an
yeah.
immigrant, uh, gets to practice what they learned in their home country. So you see this a lot with
Give
a
me
lot of.
1 minute. Hold that thought. I got to take a drink. Hold on.
You didn't miss the
I'm on my
Erudite stuff,
headphone.
Lisa. It's on Friday.
1 second.
Yeah, Lisa, I am doing the whole thing on Friday. There was a YouTube error. It's been a long night.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
You see that with a lot of Afghani refugees, right? You'll see somebody working in a fucking grocery store and they're like a doctor. They were a doctor in Afghanistan and their medical credentials aren't recognized here.
Yeah, but when I talk about the Ukrainian diaspora, in reference to actually people who have been here for 2 to 3 generations, usually people who are descendants, like the most zealous wave, of course, is the
The first.
wave that came here, the wave that came here after the Second World War. And a lot of these people became successful. You know, they're one of the most successful immigrant groups, and yeah, that still hasn't. They still haven't managed to turn Ukraine into a successful country, and I say that with the most reverence towards my ancestral homeland. But yeah,
Actually, Gabrielle, there are no original NCS characters left, but yes, there was Pablo Cortez was brought on to replace what's her name from Risolian and Isles early on in NCS, and then she herself left and someone else came, and then she left, and now there's a fourth woman occupying that particular role. Um, uh, I'll be perfectly honest. I watch way too much propaganda, guys. It's a fault, but I'm okay with it, and you can be too. So yeah, I think that helps make Israel a very successful country, though, is the general success of Jewish immigrants around the world and their ability to feed and invest in Israel, and their willingness to do so. Right, very helpful. Because Israel, and this is the same problem that would face a Palestinian state, is not viable as a state economically on its own, not without outside investment. So that helps immensely to make Israel successful. It also means that Israel is way too dependent on imports and exports for its economy to act like this, by the way, incidentally. Yes, you would David. Let's get back to the article. As we are running long tonight, we're almost at what I intended to be finished, and we're not done yet. One day, totally on my own accord, I added something like 1,200 new targets to the tracking system because the number of attacks we were conducting was decreased.
So now they have quotas?
Yes.
Oh, geez.
All I am saying is this is not looking good, Hans. I know, Fritz. In the end, it was everyone marked by lavender, tens of thousands. This happened a few weeks later when the Israeli brigades entered Gaza and there were already fewer uninvolved people in the northern areas. According to this source, even some minors were marked by lavender as targets for bombing. Normally, operatives are over the age of 17, but that was not a condition. So basically, they use these systems to kill and track entire families. We usually carried out the attack with dumb bombs. This is less, at least in my mind, less consequential. 45% of the munitions used were dumb bombs, which means they're not precision-guided munitions. Okay, let's talk about this. So, let's see if I can find a good picture.
The smart bomb went to an Ivy League school, and the dumb bomb went to junior college.
Why did my thing just X? God damn it, Google. Yes! Chrome crashed. Alright, I'm back. I'm alive. Can we see in the Creator Studio? Can I see the chat?
I see the chat.
I can't. That's beside the point. Let's see if I can't find a good picture. This is a heads-up display from F-15 in DCS. You see here is a little airplane indicator and the ladder and the aiming point. Modern aircraft have what's called a lead computing bomb and gun sight. So as I turn the aircraft, if I try to fire the gun on the aircraft, the bullets are going to turn and they're going to be pulled by gravity in a certain direction. The plane is capable of computing what that pull is going to be. So relative to the nose of the aircraft where the machine gun is located, it will move a reticule across the heads-up display that tells you where the shots are going to land. It works the same way for dumb bombs. There's a little reticule. The computer calculates where the airplane is, where the bombs will go should you release them at the nose's current position. So you just have to put, on a modern aircraft, you have to put this reticule on the target and press the pickle. The bombs drop, and they will hit the target, all else being equal. The use of a dumb bomb in and of itself is highly accurate, down to what the pilot can identify, see, and place the reticule on. A precision-guided munition is usually guided by the use of a laser to a very specific point. It is pinpoint accurate. It will hit the spot exactly where it's targeted by the laser. Dumb bombs are going to hit within a very short range of tolerances. The use of a dumb bomb in and of itself is not criminal or necessarily an indication of a war crime or care not being taken. These are very precise systems.
So the dumb bomb is that student that hires someone to do his homework for him.
I mean, I guess it's just it's half dive bombing is really what it is. Would you consider the Israeli government or society fascistic? I would consider them I would consider the government authoritarian. I don't necessarily know if I'd call it fascist.
Yeah, I'd say authoritarian society. No, Israeli society is very diverse in terms of its political opinion.
I have noticed a marked tendency for a lot of civilians to be, at least in the wake of October 7th, kind of supremacist.
Yeah, but that happened too, even with us with
9/11. It's not uncommon.
9/11, yeah, that's that will fade too, and it is already fading. Especially as hostages are not being retrieved or
the
released.
Hostages are not a priority for the Israeli government at all.
Yeah, and that's the issue, and a large section of the public knows that, and they're pretty pissed about that. That's why you're seeing so many protests against Netanyahu currently. So no, Israeli society I wouldn't characterize as fascist. There's certainly an element there, but no.
Yeah, it's certainly an authoritarian right-wing government, and has been for some time.
Yeah, the current one, yeah, for sure.
But it's I don't necessarily think I go, yeah, fascist. That's a little much. According to A, who was an officer in the target operation room in the current war, the Army's International Law Department has never before given such sweeping approval for such high collateral damage. It's not that just you can kill any person who's a Hamas soldier, which is clearly permitted and legitimate in terms of international law, but they directly tell you you're allowed to kill them along with many civilians. So anyone, if you've been associated with Hamas in the past year or two, you can be bombed with up to 20 civilians, collateral damage, even without any kind of special permission. In practice, the principle of proportionality did not exist. War crime. Where are we? We're at an hour and a half. All right.
We knew that we'd kill over 100 civilians.
I mean, there it is. They don't care. Is there any other conclusion to draw? Borelli.
If you're you know, at the very highest levels, this kind of, if you're going to pursue that genocide charge, they couldn't, it's kind of like the Christish verdict. They couldn't have failed to know that this would do extensive damage to the population, that this sort of wanton,
Is this probably a genocide?
Liberal targeting.
Yes, it's probably genocide. Am I going to stake my life on that? No.
I don't know at this point. I know it's something very, very bad. I know that it is a horrible crime, but it's
Well, it gets down to like you
hard
look
to
at the
say.
TikToks of Israeli soldiers like ransacking Palestinians' homes, right? Running through their drawers and throwing around their underwear and doing that kind of shit.
That's not new, though. I mean, they've done
That's not
that.
new, but it speaks to a discipline problem, right?
Yeah.
You know
No,
what it reminds me of? It's not necessarily as severe as, but it reminds me of Abu Ghraib. Uh, if you're old enough to remember that, chat.
I think that there's more severe things that they've done
There
than Abu
probably is,
Ghraib.
but I don't think they're photographing them.
Have been a few photographed. I mean, of
A few, but not
them holding militants and stripping them naked and stuff like that. There's been like a few
or executions,
documented.
degradations. Yeah, that's happened for sure.
Yeah,
But like I didn't like humiliation and the stripping of naked is bad, but it's not necessarily the same as building a pyramid of terrorists and shit like that.
no, it's yeah, but yeah. I mean, no, it's hard to say. I'm very, it's horrible. I would be very interested to see, because eventually they're going to have to take and hold the
Eventually, they're going to
areas
leave.
that they haven't, that they
Eventually,
haven't
they're going
really
to
been
leave
able to.
Gaza. They can't do it. I don't think they're capable of it.
I don't agree with you there. I think that they're more than capable.
Well, they have not demonstrated that thus far. It'll be an amazing and sudden. It'll be an amazing and sudden display of skill and professionalism that we have not seen to date from the Israeli military. They're lucky everyone else around them is really bad at fighting too. So I think insofar as closing thoughts go, I think my feeling has been the same since the start. I want peace for everyone there. I'm not sure the current Israeli government or Hamas is the organizations that are going to bring them that. In fact, I'm almost
No, they're
positive
not.
they're not. You can't undo what's been done. We can't undo what's been done on October 7th. We can't undo what's been done since then. We can't undo what's been done in 1948. The only thing I can say is that we have a duty to try to move forward in justice. And that's not happening now. So I think that's going to wrap everything up for the evening. Unless you've got anything else, Hetman.
I don't. I mean, it's very depressing.
On Friday, we're going to be doing something different. On Friday, I will be streaming, and we will be looking at Erudite's recent stream, where she speaks with a caller about Christian permissiveness for adultery. And very quickly, her position becomes there are Christians who don't follow Christ. And we move on to the Jews killed Jesus. So it's going to be a fun stream, and not really fun, but entertaining. So join us Friday night for that. We are going to get our Ukraine properly rescheduled and try to bring the whole gang on for you next week. And I'm going to get back to Civil War General just as soon as I figure out where my head's at. Barring that, I want to wish everyone a good night and thank you for coming out.
Thank you, everyone. And please subscribe if you haven't already.